Spring migration can be an incredible event. During March, waterfowl migrating through can be quite the spectacle. Each day, thousands upon thousands of geese may pass overhead in various sized flocks, from less than a dozen to flocks containing hundreds of individuals. Canada geese make up the bulk of these travelers, being the most common goose species in the Northeast. The other species you will see in large numbers is the snow goose. These geese come in two color morphs, the typical white morph, who will make up most of the flock, and the rare blue phase, where even in a large flock, you may only have about a dozen or so of these color morphs. But if you look carefully through these flocks of geese, you may be lucky enough to find a much rarer species. Hidden among flocks of Canada and snow geese can be species such as the cackling goose, who look like miniature Canada geese, with short necks and short stubby bills, a Ross goose, which looks like a miniature snow goose with a stubby bill and no grin patch like you would see in a snow goose, or even maybe a greater white-fronted goose, a goose with orange legs and bill, a white front, and black speckling along their body. So, how do you improve your chances of finding one of these rare geese? First, you need to find flocks of Canada or snow geese. The more in a flock, the greater your chances are of finding something different. Geese are socially obligate migrators, so if they get lost from their own species, they tend to just join a flock of similar looking species. Most of the time, it ends up being a flock of Canada geese. Geese during this time are typically doing one of three things: actively migrating, which are the flocks flying overhead, resting, or foraging. Depending on if the geese are doing more long distance flying or just flying between foraging and resting locations, they may be flying at different heights. Birds that are planning on traveling long distance will typically be flying at great heights. Those just traveling between spots may be lower, making them easier to pick out if there is something rarer in the group. Typically, it's going to be much more likely to pick out a rarity within a flock of Canadas. And most of the time when I find something different, it is with the Canada geese. The most common of the rarities you can find is the cackling goose. For this species, look for a goose that can be quite a bit smaller than the geese around them, having a shorter neck, and you'll often notice them flapping much quicker than the other geese so they can keep up. They can be difficult to pick out of a flock. Take your time and scan each goose to get a feel of how their size varies as they fly overhead. A Ross's goose in a flock of Canadas is going to be the easiest to pick out. Their white plumage stands in stark contrast to the dark Canadas. They are also much smaller, so for them, look for a small white goose flying among the Canadas. The third main rarity that you may find is the greater white-fronted goose. Again, this is a smaller goose. In flight, this one could be a little bit more difficult to pick out, especially if lighting isn't the best. At this angle, you can't really make out their orange bill and legs, or see their white forehead. Besides size, look for the black speckling on its belly. To get more time to scan flocks for these rarities, you want to find flocks of birds that are either resting and or foraging. This takes a bit more planning though. While flying flocks can be more coincidental, these foraging flocks may take a bit of work to locate. Geese tend to have preferred staging areas, where they gather to rest and eat before they begin flying again. These areas tend to be consistent from year to year, being chosen by past migrations and social cues passed on to each new generation. These areas tend to be open farm fields, parks, lakes, ponds, or rivers. While you can use eBird to help find locations where a large number of geese are being seen, it often pays off going searching for these flocks yourself. Birds are constantly coming and going from these areas. Try going to nearby rivers, lakes, streams, and ponds in search of resting flocks. Or look in farm fields, meadows, and parks for flocks that are actively foraging. Areas that have both, water access in large fields, tend to collect the highest number of birds. The more birds, the higher the chance of something unique being among them. During the days that these birds may stop at an area to rest, they may travel between these resting and foraging areas throughout the day. So, knowing where these locations are can help you find a particular bird if one is reported at one spot but is currently missing. If a group takes off, knowing their preferred staging spots and what direction they leave in helps you predict where they may be heading to. Once you find these main locations, it's helpful to keep an eye on the roost locations, where they tend to spend the night, around sunrise and again near sunset, when flocks tend to congregate in these areas, especially in large numbers. During the day, checking their preferred foraging locations will be your best bet, when they split up into smaller flocks to feed. Once you find these flocks, the fun part begins. Begin scanning each member of the flock with binoculars or a spotting scope if you have one. Look for any that look different, whether that be smaller, different colored like a white goose, one that doesn't have a black neck, or maybe has a different bill or leg color. When individually looking through a flock, keep an eye out for miniature Canadas, which would be the cackling geese. Look for a smaller goose with short stubby neck and bill. Keep in mind, depending on the subspecies of each, there may not be that much of a size difference between the two. The migratory lesser subspecies of Canada tend to be on the smaller side. In the northeast, we typically get the Richardson subspecies of cackling goose, which tend to be on the larger size for that species. So when you have those two together, there could be not that much of a difference in size. Ross in a flock of Canadas can be easy to pick out. Make sure that they have a short stubby bill and no grin patch like you would see in a snow goose. They, like cacklers, are quite a bit smaller than Canadas. Greater white-fronted geese are also another species you can pick out in a flock. They will also be smaller, which can help but also makes them blend in a bit too. But the white on their face can stand out in a sea of brown and black birds. The three main rarities are all going to be smaller than the Canada geese. Other geese, though, are always a possibility, even ones rarer than the three mentioned earlier, such as barnacle geese, pink-footed geese, and the tundra and taiga bean geese. So next time you see a flock of geese, take your time and carefully scan through them. You never know what you may find.